In-person networking events, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I'm Greg. I'm the Introverted Networker. And I just came off of 2 weeks of in-person networking events. I went to 3 different events in those 2 weeks. One was out of town, 2 were in town. I have a lot of feelings and thoughts about those events, and each one was different, and they all were good in their own way, and they all had things that I probably would either do differently or wish had been different, or just observations about what those events sort of did to me and for me. So I'm going to kind of break that down in this video. And my point of this is think about when you're going to network in person and understand what the trade-offs are. Okay, so there are a lot of people out there who love going to networking events. There are a lot of people who enjoy going to networking events. There's a lot of people who hate going to networking events. And no matter what camp you fall in, there's a good chance at some point you're going to be at a networking event. There's nothing wrong with that. And I teach one way to grow your network, which doesn't involve networking events. That doesn't mean I never go to a networking event. And I think the reason why I teach my way and the way I like my way is because it allows me to network on my schedule, in my space, in a place that's comfortable for me, which means I'm more likely to do it. Networking events gets me out of those things, outside of my schedule, outside of my space, outside of my comfort zone. And so because of those things, I'm not as good at networking, and it has other impacts on my life when I have to go to these networking events. So I'm going to talk a little bit about those in this episode. And again, just kind of talk about what some of the good or bad things were. And then you can think about these things when you're thinking about your next networking event. If you decide to go to one, if you decide not to go to one, again, it's up to you. It's not that you should never do it. It's just I don't prefer it as my number one way to network. So let me break this down. Let me talk about the 3 events real quickly, and then I'm going to talk a little about each one. So the first was Unleash HR, which was a HR technology conference in Las Vegas. That was the first week of May. The second one was called EXHR, which was an HR conference here in Denver the second week of May. And the last one was a speaking group or an executive organization, which is made up of clubs of people. So there's these people who run these clubs. They're a paid membership club where you get executives from different companies. They get together and they work to sort of do professional development for those individuals in those clubs. And so they were putting on an event where they invited a bunch of speakers to come and pitch their speech or pitch their presentation in 2 minutes. And that let all the people who run these clubs see that so that they could potentially pick speakers for the rest of this year or next year. And so that was the last one. So I'm going to talk through them a little bit and talk about some of the things that worked and maybe some of the things that didn't work. So Unleash HR, my strategy for that one was I was moderating panels and introducing speakers within one room. And as a result of that, I got to meet all of the speakers in advance. So I already knew them, they knew me, we had established a connection. And when I got to the conference, it was easy to strike up conversations and talk to them. That was a good thing. That was something that really was comfortable for me because we'd already talked beforehand. And now coming out of it, I've connected with all those people on LinkedIn through other ways, through emails, and I can reach back out to them and say, hey, we didn't really get to talk too much at the conference. Would love to continue the conversation. I've already started doing that with some of them. So that was a really good opportunity. You don't always get the opportunity to host those rooms, so I understand if that's not going to happen for you. But the tip you can take away from this and what I've said in some of my other episodes about networking at conferences is you should be meeting or trying to connect with the speakers in advance of the conference so that when you go, you're sort of a known name. They've already talked to you. They kind of know you a little bit. You can ask them questions about their presentation. You can continue the conversation and make that connection. So those are great people to connect with at a conference. It's less random. You've got more of an opportunity to really talk about what they talked about and engage them on their terms and start to build that relationship. So that was one of the really big positives that came out of Unleash HR. The second thing was, I felt like it went well from a conference standpoint. I wore my red velvet jacket one day and I wore a black velvet jacket that I had the other day. And those got some conversations going. People stopped me sort of on the expo floor to comment on what I was wearing. So again, one of the tips I've given in the past is wear something that makes you stand out so that people comment on it and you can talk to them about it. I was not the only person there wearing something that was a little bit attention grabbing. There were several other people who used the same thing, and I talked to some of them as well. So did that create any connections that I'm probably going to follow up with? Not necessarily. It was definitely good to get the conversation going. But again, that just happened to be the people I talked to. Probably aren't people I'm going to spend a lot of time following up with, but it doesn't mean it's a bad strategy. So that was some of the goods and the bad that came out of Vegas. The second one was the HR conference in Denver. And this was a smaller conference, and I knew I was going to get a lot of chance to interact with those individuals at the conference. So I didn't do a lot of pre-work there because I knew it was going to be smaller groups and there was going to be a lot more opportunities to talk to people and meet people. It doesn't mean you shouldn't do that at a smaller conference. It just, I didn't really take the time to do that. And that conference in particular didn't have I didn't have an agenda of who were the speakers in advance. And that's nothing against the conference. Again, just smaller conference, they may not do that. So it made it a little more difficult to connect in advance. So if you're going to a conference that doesn't have that, it's okay. You may not get to connect as much in advance. Just know you're going to have to do a little bit more when you get there to get to know people. The good thing about that was I did get to talk to a lot of people. There was a lot of breakouts, and we all, of course, you all have name tags. I didn't really customize mine too much because, again, smaller conference, I already knew many people at this conference. So there were people who would be able to introduce me. And it was good. I think the really cool thing that came out of this one was while we were there, I did get the participant list while I was there. And so I was able to look through that and see kind of who people were, where they worked, what they were doing. And I used that to make sure I intentionally went and met those people during the sessions or during the networking times. So you've got to, again, if you have that list of people, names, and then you see their name tags and you can say, oh, you work at such and such a place, would love to talk to you about that. So I think that one was particularly good. And I've got that list of people. I'm now following up with the people I had conversations with or people I thought were interesting when they spoke. I moderated a panel there. So a lot of people got to see me moderate and they came up to me afterwards. Like I said, you may not be into speaking. I would recommend, if you're curious, if you can get involved in these conferences, moderating panels is a good way to get in front of people without having to create a whole presentation and speech if you're not really comfortable doing that, or if you don't have a presentation. But if conferences or events are looking for moderators, do that. It's pretty simple to moderate. You get to know the panelists, you get to know them a little bit better, you get to know the topic, and you're really just kind of up there facilitating the conversation, and everybody sees you and gets to know you. So it's an opportunity for you to kind of connect and let people see what you could do. So I know that's not for everybody, and especially if you're just an attendee at a conference, that's not going to happen. But if you're in any way, shape, or form involved with an event and they need moderators, I think is a great opportunity to kind of get in front of people so they hear what you do and they hear who you are, and then they remember you and you can talk to them later. And that's one thing I've started doing more. Most conferences that have you as a speaker aren't going to pay you anyway, unless you're like really famous keynote person. You're not going to get paid anyway. But if you are a panelist, or whether you're a panelist or a moderator, you probably will get some of the fee waived, if not all the fee. And like in Vegas, I got the entire conference for free, and they put me up for 2 nights in a hotel just for moderating those panels. And so that was a really good deal for me, because otherwise, I'd have been paying for the whole conference. I'd have been paying for 2 nights at Caesar's Palace. I got those things thrown in as a person who was running the panel. So if you're looking to go to conferences, if you're okay in front of people with a microphone, then that's something you can look into volunteering for, or at least raising your hand and saying you're interested in that. Okay, so coming out of the EXHR conference, great connections. I also got to do a workshop on my networking stuff, so people kind of saw what I could do. So I've got a lot of follow-ups. So I think both of these conferences, I have a ton of people to follow up with, which is a good thing. That's good. Conferences are a good way to say, hey, we met, we didn't really get to talk, let's talk some more, and you can extend those conversations. I think the last one was this speaking event. And this was really more, not only was I pitching myself and my idea, but I was getting to meet a lot of people that run this organization. And so within this organization, like I said, these are CEOs, COOs, other executives that run companies. They may not be exactly my target audience, but a lot of times from those executives, if you have a topic or you have an idea or something that connects with them, they might put you in touch with the head of HR. They might bring you in to do a presentation, or they might hire you to do some work. So it was important to me to have a good pitch on this. It was important to me to meet them in person. And so again, in-person event, it was an all afternoon thing after I had been doing these 2 other conferences. And I got to tell you, like, I had to pump myself up for this one because I was already kind of tired. I was already kind of run down, and I was like, is this really going to make a difference? So I had to work on my pitch, because getting to a 2-minute pitch after you do an hour-long presentation is tough. It's actually harder than doing a 2-hour presentation. And multiple speakers said the same thing about this. So got to meet those chairs of these groups, got to meet the other speakers, got to see the other speakers. So it was completely beneficial. And coming out of it, the organizers gave me a list of all those people. So I've got all those follow-ups as well. So tons of connections came out of these. So events can be good if you're going to be able to get a list of the attendees, a list in advance that would help. And if there's like a lot of opportunity for you to connect and talk to people and get face-to-face and then follow up with them. So the value's in the follow-up. If you don't follow up, it's like you never went. So if you're going to go to a conference and you don't plan on following up with people, just don't bother. You can go into the event for the conference. So those are some of the upsides to that. And I said some of the downsides already, but the main downside that I found was the Vegas conference was 2 days. The HR conference in Denver was 2 days-ish. It was a little bit longer because it started the night before. And then the event at the end of the week was just one afternoon. With all of those events, I was completely drained from an energy perspective. And it took me coming back from Vegas, I needed like a whole day just to recover. And when I say whole day, I wasn't in bed. It was hard for me to ramp up and do a lot of other work. I just needed to recharge and kind of like come back home and get things set and do some things around the house. So it was like almost like the conference was really 3 days instead of 2 days. The one here in Denver, same sort of thing. That day in between, it was like Tuesday, Wednesday, and then I had Thursday, and then I had Friday. I had to use Thursday to really get ready with that 2-minute pitch, and I was just wiped out. It was hard to ramp back up. The in-person events for me really, really drain my energy, and I never really noticed that, but as I get older, it takes me longer to recover. Same thing as you're older, when you work out or you do, something really strenuous, it takes longer to recover. That comes with age. And I find if I'm going to go to an event, one of the things I have to plan for is the next day or so, I'm not going to be particularly productive. So what my point is think about events you go to and the trade-offs you're going to make. If you're going to go and meet a lot of people in your industry, really in the same space, and you're going to get time to connect with them in a way that you can follow up, it might be worth it to go to the event and then have the day after where you're really going to have to recover. If this is you, if you're more an introvert like me and your energy goes down, then it's probably something where you want to allow yourself some space the day after. Now, again, if it's not worth an extra day to recover and particularly lose that time working or doing other productive stuff, then you really want to consider, do I want to go to this event? So as I said at the beginning, this isn't about not going to events and saying events are bad. It's about thinking about the entire commitment you're making, not just the time there, but the time to prep, to get there, to follow up after, to recharge. It becomes more than just a 2-hour event or a half-day event or a full-day conference. It becomes about the days on both ends that you're going to have to spend recharging or getting ready. And if that's something that seems of value, then great. If you don't know if it's going to be of value, I would really ask yourself if it's worth going to, because you are going to spend a lot of time and energy and you may not get a lot out of it. That's just the way I function there. And so that's why when I think about networking, I go to sort of my 5-step method. which allows me to connect with people when it works for me, to set up times with people when it works for me, to talk to them and learn about them in a one-on-one space where it's a really deep conversation and a lot richer than you might get at a conference where there's a lot of distractions. It allows me to talk more about what I do and how they can help me. And it allows me to do this in a way that if I feel like I want to do a lot of these in a week, I can do a lot. If I feel like I've got a week where, I've got a lot going on and my energy is not really high, I do one or two. And I don't have to wait for events. I don't have to wait for conferences. I don't have to say my networking is tied to that. I have my own process that I can be doing all the time. And that's why I prefer to do this more in my approach than in the event approach. It's not that there's anything, again, there's multiple ways to do this. Mine is not the only way, but I prefer this way. And I think for a lot of people who are like me, where their energy gets low after they've been around a lot of people, it's a good way to do it and maintain it and do it consistently. Because if I had to go to conferences every week, or I went to networking events every week, or even if I went a couple times a month, I would be losing so many other days because it's just not sustainable. I need the time to recover. It's not sustainable to go see these people and talk to these people, make these connections, and then do all the work of following up. Because if you think about it, the follow-up work that I'm going to have to do now is almost the same as if I was just doing this at home and had never gotten to the conference. The one thing is I have the list of people to follow up with, but the work is going to be the same amount of time. So I've spent all this time at the conference and all this energy, and now I've got the work of the follow-up to follow my own method. So it's like kind of double work. All I really got was the list of people. So that's kind of how I think about this. It's just a lot. And I think that's why people think about networking. They think about their last experience in a conference and how much work it was and how much energy it took. And they go, yeah, I don't want to go to that event, or I don't want to go to that conference, or I don't want to network, because it just takes up so much time, which is people say, I don't have time to network. And that's why. And it's not just time, it's I don't have the energy to network. So I go back to all the stuff I talk about in all these episodes, all my newsletters, everything I talk about, doing it on your time, on your schedule, in your space, in your energy, your sense of energy, is something that I can do more sustainably and on an ongoing basis. So that's why I picked that. I don't know. You tell me, how does that work for you? If you've got an opinion on this, I would love to hear it. I would love to hear if you struggle with in-person events or if you really love in-person events. You tell me what makes the most sense, or what works for you. But that's what works for me. I hope that helps some people out there. And maybe if you're thinking, should I go to that event or not? Maybe this helps you with a little bit of a decision sort of tree in order to figure out if it's worth your time. So hopefully that helps. Go out, give it a shot. Let me know if it works. Remember, go out, meet some interesting people, and always be connecting.